All right, so it looks like it's about time to start, so let's get on with today's show. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Webinar Wednesday. My name is Franklin, and I'm the Product App Specialist for Kits and your webinar host. Now, this is where you need to be every Wednesday to learn those tips and tricks you need to know to becoming that supercharged power user. Now, if you have any questions throughout today's webinar, you could submit them in the chat box. That's going to be located just on the GoToWebinar control panel on the right side of your screen. I will be taking a few minutes at the end of the webinar to answer them. All right, so let's get on with today's webinar. So what we're going to be looking at today is everything that you need to know to import those awesome AutoCAD files and SIF files into your Kits mobile. So we're going to be looking at the all-important AutoCAD import requirements. And then we're going to be looking at using Kits Web to import those AutoCAD files. Now, if you're not familiar with what an AutoCAD file, this is basically a drawing, a technical drawing of the furniture assets that you are used to using. This could be provided to you either by the manufacturer or maybe a design team that you're working for. And there are various ways to communicating the information that's required to building these scenes. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going fast forward. We're going to be receiving an AutoCAD file that we're going to actually use to import into Kits Web. And then we're going to publish that to our Kits mobile so then we can go through the iterations that we need to go through for the project. All right? All right, so without further ado, let's get on with today's show. And first off, we're going to look at those all-important AutoCAD import requirements. Okay, so these are 5 main requirements. Now, you can access this guideline in our Knowledge Center. We can make that available to you if you contact support, if you can't find it there, or you can contact myself or Julia in case you want to have these handy guidelines beside you. Now, in order to successfully import an AutoCAD file into Kits Web, what you'll need to do is you'll need to receive or create basically typical or furniture layout that's authored using one of the authoring or one of the specification tools that that are authored to create these typicals. What we're talking about basically are the platforms 2020 CAP, Project Matrix, or CET Designer. Okay, if you have any questions regarding the platform that your designers use, you can contact us and we can actually go through the process with your team. Now, the AutoCAD file must not contain no more than 1,500 furniture items. So what does that mean? That means it cannot contain more than 1,500 items that are pulled from a manufacturer's catalog. Okay, non-furniture items such as any CAD drawn elements. These could be the lines that are indicating the floor plan, any text, any dimensioning. Those aren't counted towards the CAP, and they also aren't recognized by Kits, so they will not be imported. All right. So in case you're out there and you're wondering, oh, can I import a furniture plan? Can I import a floor plan? No, you cannot. Okay, because Kits does not recognize any non-manufacturer items. All right. Now, the drawing area of the DWG must not exceed 100 feet by 100 feet. That's literally 10,000 square feet. We don't suggest that you build using your iPad such a large floor plate. I've done it in the past, 9,000 square feet, and it was quite the undertaking only because you got a wee little bit of a screen to utilize when you're creating these drawings. So it does take some effort. It can be done, but it takes a lot of effort. What we do suggest if you're working on a larger project, let's say you're working on a 10,000 square foot floor plate, what we do suggest is that you break up your project based on certain categories. Let's say lounge reception as one category, private office as one, maybe executive desking as another, any kind of task workstations. You group them all together, and then what you can do is you can build each individual layout assign it a specific name. So it could be like private office 1A, private office 1B, if you have left and rights of those offices, or vice versa. If you have questions about that, you can certainly contact myself, and I can show you a few ways of creating large projects using kits and being able to provide the right communication to your team as well as to your client based on the package that you're going to have to create for that project. All right. So the DWG also, basically, if it has any structural options, if you're not familiar with what a structural option is, these are basically options that you can specify for a particular item. Let's say a chair. The chair can come in various formats. It can come with height adjustable arms. It could come with fixed arms. It can come with no arms. And these structural options, based on the option that you select, for instance, the starting or the basic image of that chair may be a chair without arms, but if you select the option with the arms, those arms do appear. That's a structural option. So basically, KITS does not recognize any structural options in the DWG. The item will be imported, however, the specification for that option will not be reflected, okay? So there are ways to getting around that, and we will be going through that in today's webinar as well, all right? And lastly, only the items specified in model space will be imported. So in case your designer has created, for some reason, any kind of drawings that are in paper space, and don't worry, you don't have to understand what the terms are. Just you know, you can quickly ask your designer or whoever is doing the CAD for you guys that only the items in model space will be imported. They'll understand what that is. Okay. All right. So those are the all-important 5 general requirements to a successful import, AutoCAD DWG import. So now that we've covered that, let's get on with the show. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and show you the lovely DWG that I'm using today. All right, so this is a new line from Allsteel. It's called the Approach line, and it was actually sent to me by Allsteel. In case you are authored to sell Allsteel, this will be included in a new gallery coming soon. All right. So this is the DWG. It's of a media center and so basically a media center and meeting space. You can see that lovely DWG there. You may be wondering why it's in these shaded colors, and that's just because I've transferred it over that way. However, you may be used to seeing your DWGs as a wireframe, but if you have access to CAD or some kind of CAD viewer, if you find this little option here, you can actually select through all the different visual styles, okay? I like to add some kind of shading or conceptual shading because what that does is it gives the wireframe or it gives the model a solid surface to look at, all right? So here is the lovely DWG. This was created using CAP. I know that because if I click on this item here, and I don't want to move that, and I don't want to scale that. And if I look at its attribute, and the reason why I'm showing you this is because I want you all to understand what exactly KITS recognizes based on the symbols that you use in the manufacturer's list. So what you see are these special tags that are created for each item. Now, these tags can be written either for 2020, Project Matrix, CET, any of those authoring tools. These contain the all-important information of how KITS finds the catalog items or the furniture item in the catalogs, okay? So these all refer to sort of a mapping of basically what KITS needs to bring in. So it'll recognize the part number, the manufacturing code, the catalog code, how many are supposed to come in when you drag it into a space, what the default starting location is supposed to be, and then any other specific tags that are written for that, okay? So these are all important because in that nice data set that the manufacturers provide us, it basically contains the mapping information and all the assets that are required to producing that symbol in kits. Okay, so in case you're wondering why maybe a particular item isn't importing or a typical isn't importing, and you have access to CAD, if you actually click on one of the items and then you do a right click, you can look at the attribute. Usually I just click on edit attribute, and you can see whether or not it contains this all important information. If it doesn't, then that's telling you that the typical that you're using was not used or was not created using an authored specification tool. All right, so that's a little tidbit for you to understand. All right, so this is the typical that we want to import, and I've already loaded it, or I've already saved it onto my desktop. So what I want to do now is, after I've had a good review of this, and you don't necessarily have to review this in CAD. I know most of you may not have access or may not even know how to use CAD. Just for those that do, and for those that work closely with the design team, I want you to have some basic knowledge of exactly what's required, so that when you actually talk about this with your CAD team or your design team, then all parties understand exactly the guidelines here. Okay. All right. So I've saved it to my computer. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and log into Kits Web. Now, again, if this is your first time viewing this webinar, what I'm going to do is I am going to post in the chat. That's going to be in the GoToMeeting control panel on the right, the link to this website. Okay, so there's the all-important link that's posted in the chat. You can click on there. That will lead you directly to this page. Now, the other requirement is you need to use Internet Explorer. I know. Most of you are like, Internet Explorer. Unfortunately, when this program was created, it was created quite some time ago. I would say really over 10 years now, maybe even over 15 years ago. And Internet Explorer was the preferred web browser that it was written for. So, being as it is 2018 and we have other browsers that we can use, Kits is normalized to be used in Internet Explorer. Okay, so you will have the most success using Internet Explorer to do your DWG imports. You may be able to open it up in other browsers, but you may lose some functionality or even some key features that are required. Okay. All right. So now that we have the Kits Collaborator web open, you're going to go ahead and click in Login. And here you can see your email, basically where you have to place your login credentials. These are the same login credentials that we've supplied you for your Kits account on your preferred device, whether it's an iPad or a Windows Surface device. That same email login and password is the same one that you use here. Okay? All right. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to log in. And once I do, it leads me to the home screen, which is this one here. And what you can see is basically, you may not see exactly what I have on my screen, but you should have the option to selecting keyword phrase or doing a search for a product or searching manufacturer's catalogs. Okay, so again, Kits Web, just so you have some background information about what Kits Web was. Kits Web was the original tool that was created, was the original collaborator that was created until the necessity for a mobile tool was required. That's when we created Kits Mobile. Okay, now Kits Web, even though it still exists, it's only there to supplement what we do on Kits Mobile. So there's not much R&D or maintenance that's done on this. So please, if you are interested in using Kits Web, just understand that again, this is a dinosaur, and it may be on the way out to extinction. Okay. However, we will make sure that the import DWG feature remains active and live. Whether we make changes to Kits Web to only providing that option, is something that we still haven't decided yet. But anyway, you do have access to Kits Web, and you can certainly explore what you can do with it. All right, so now that I'm here, what I want to do is I want to first click on Manage Projects. This is going to lead you to the Manage Projects screen, and you're going to see all the different projects that you currently have saved in your Kits Web. Okay, these aren't Kits mobile projects. Why do I know that? Is because if I look at what I'm currently viewing, I can see here that I'm currently viewing only web projects. Okay, if I want to see what my mobile projects are, I can click on here, and I can now see all my mobile projects. So these are all the projects that I currently have saved on my iPad. All right. Remember when I talk about syncing often, so that you can create a copy of your iPad account into our cloud? Well, that's it. Okay. So in case you've deleted a project and you haven't run a sync on your iPad, you can access that same project by going to Kits Web and going into your mobile projects, and then making sure that you publish that deleted project back to your mobile, so that when you sync again, it comes back and everyone's happy. Okay. All right. So what we want to do here is we want to go ahead and we want to create a project. Just so you know, if you click on mobile projects, there is no access to doing anything. You have to be in web projects to create any kind of project. Okay, even if you click on create project in mobile, it'll send you back to web projects. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and create a project. So we're going to click on create project, and then we're taken to the My Project Detail screen. All right, first off, as a best practice, what we want to do is we want to assign a project name. So what kind of project name do I assign? Well, I always preach, use the same kind of naming convention that you would normally use on your Kits mobile, so that, again, other team members recognize exactly what you're creating, as well as what you're sharing, just by looking at the project name. Okay, so the idea here is that we received this DWG from a design team. We want to import it into Kits. They probably sent it to us, and it was named Media Space. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we gave it a proper naming convention. So I always like to use my first name, or I'm sorry, my last name. Then I like to put who the client is, which project we're working on. Okay, it could be KISS Office is what I normally write. And then also it could be a specific section or area or layout. We know it's a media space, so I'm just going to put media. And then I like to date it. Okay, and why do I like to date it? Well, I like to date my projects, every project, because it's a way for me to track progress. All right, because often enough, you can actually pick up your iPad and then you can create a project, and then all of a sudden, you send it out and the client says, no, I want that in blue. Well, then you go back to the original project and then you copy it over, and then you respecify it and you change it back to a different color, send it back to the client, and the client goes, nah, put it back to the original color. So what I like to do is I like to create an original, copy those projects, and then date them every time I make a different iteration, so I can track my progress of that project. And then you can see basically what it takes to actually closing a sale for any particular project. All right, it's a good way of tracking your progress and seeing basically the amount of effort you have to place for, let's say, a project that's worth 10,000, worth 20,000, 25, 50, and then so on and so forth. All right. So again, I'm going to place the date, and it's May 9th, 2018. All right. Don't worry about description area. You don't need to do anything here. All right. What we want to now do is we want to load that DWG. So we want to create from a DWG. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Browse. And it opens up to that folder for me. probably because it was the last folder I accessed. And then I'm going to go ahead and open. So you can now see that it's loaded in the Create from DWG bar here. I'm going to go ahead now and I'm going to create a project. What we're actually going to do today is we're going to do two imports. We're going to do a create project using just the DWG, and then we're going to create a project using, a SIF, and then we're going to create a project using both the DWG and a SIF, okay? All right, so depending on the intricacy of the project, the zones will be listed. Here you can see what kits recognizes are the assets that are found in that DWG. Let's quickly look at the DWG, put it into plan mode, and let's just move that over here. So you can see exactly what it is recognizing, okay? So you see a familiar face there. So you can see that what kits is doing is it's recognizing the plan view of the actual project, and it's listing all the items in zones. So here I have two zones. I have one zone and two zones. The reason why it creates those zones is basically the relative distance of each furniture item from each other. So if it's slightly removed, it'll create a cluster of items as one zone. Okay, as you can see here, it's created this as one zone and this cluster of items as one zone. We do know what it needs to build is that, and I can certainly see it in the floor plan. Now, it also lists any 2D symbols and all 3D symbols, okay? And the reason why it does that is because by default, you can see here that it imports by default both 2D and 3D. Why do we allow it to import both 2D and 3D? Well, because we do know that some items may not have a 3D symbol, such as electrical items. These can have just basically information, but you need to download it or you need to sync it or import it because it's part of the actual typical, and it may be a requirement for the project. All right, so just recognize that in your zone, you need to know exactly, not exactly all the items that you need to import, but basically the cluster of items that you need to import. So by looking at this here, I know that these are the proper zones, and I can see that there are 9 3D symbols or manufactured furniture items and 6 in zone 2. Okay, I want to make sure that I import both those zones. I can click either one, or I can click on this top box and it'll select everything below. If I only want to view 3D, I can certainly do so, and it'll only indicate the 3D that's there, but because the 2D symbol is also in the same zone, that's the reason why you see the 2D. Okay, I like to leave it as both 2D and 3D because again, it may be a requirement to importing that all-important 2D symbol. Once you have your zone selected, click on Continue, and based on the intricacy of the project, will determine how long it takes to actually import this project. So by default, you can see here it provides a warning. This is the same. This is a warning that you'll receive all the time. You can go ahead and click on Continue. And then now what it's doing is it's creating the actual project in kits. Okay. So again, what we're going to be looking at is the importing of a 3D DWG. Then we're going to import just a SIF that contains the information for that 3D DWG. And then we're going to import both the 3D DWG as well as the SIF together. All right. So once it's complete, you can see what it provides me is a nice little grayscale image of the actual layout. That looks pretty good because this is what I'm actually looking at. So you can see here, it's pretty much copied exactly what was in that DWG. If I scroll down to the bottom, I can see I get a quick summary view of all the items. If I click on details, I can get a nice detail view of all those items. Okay. Here, it's providing me red question marks because it's telling me that these are missing specifications. I don't recommend using this tool to specify your project. That's the reason why we have the DWG import, because specifying using our mobile device is so much easier than having to go through this. Okay? All right, so once I'm satisfied with this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and publish to mobile format. Once I click that, Kits begins to take this project and it begins to create a communication to our cloud, so that the next time you open up your mobile device, you'll get a notification, and you'll see it in the notification bell in the project gallery screen that you have a pending project to sync down to your iPad. Okay. So if I quickly look at my iPad, and let's go ahead and open up Kits. Now you can see here, I have a 1. Okay. In case you don't see a 1 and your Kits was open, all you need to do is tap on the sync link. That takes you into the catalog subscription screen, but essentially what it does is it creates the communication to our cloud so that it retrieves anything that needs to be synced down to your iPad, right? So once you do that, you can go back into your project gallery screen, and then you should be able to see an indication there. Okay, I already had one, and if I tap on there, you can see what it is. It says basically you've accepted shared projects that have not yet been synced down to this device. Sync now. Okay, so we're going to sync that project, and you're going to see what happens. All right. In the meanwhile, I'm going to go back to my Kits web. We go back to Manage Projects, and again, I'm going to start a new project. Okay, let's just double check Kits here. We're still syncing. This time, again, it's going to be of the, Kits just finished. And just to show you, there's the project that we just imported. Okay. Double tap it, and you can see you can go through all the motions again, just like you're used to. You can fully edit this, this typical. As you can see, I can pull everything away. I can re-specify it, or I can complete the specification options that's here. Let's just quickly add something. And you can see that start to be, you can see that project start to complete. Okay. All right. So again, we're going to go back to Kits Web. And again, we're going to create that same project. So naming convention, client, project. We know it's the media space, the date, which is again 5/09/18. But this time, I'm going to include SIF at the end. Why am I adding SIF? Remember, you can change the title or the project name anytime you want, but the reason why I'm doing SIF is because I'm indicating exactly how I'm importing this project in. So I'm going to make sure that I find my SIF. And what I like to do with all my SIF files is I like to right-click on the SIF file. It may actually look like the 2020 symbol, but what I like to do is I like to go into the actual SIF, open with, and then I like to choose the program that I want to open with, normally Notepad, and then I like to make sure that any SIF files that are created are always opened up in that format. All right, this really helps me when I'm actually building multiple galleries and projects, and I have multiple worksheets and SIF files, because they don't necessarily indicate that it's a SIF file. It may just indicate that it's a CAP worksheet document. So I like to make that distinction. Okay, it's a little tip there. So here, what we're going to do is we're going to import the project basically using the SIF. So I'm going to go ahead, create the project. Here you can see that it's asking me to include all this stuff. Don't worry about all that. You don't necessarily have to pick anything here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and import, so I can begin the import process. Okay, it's much faster than importing the DWG, but what you can see here is, again, it provides me the same products, but this time, you can see there's no red question marks, is because the SIF contained the option structure that was selected, or the option specifications that were selected for those particular items. Okay, I don't see an image here. Why don't I see an image? Well, I'm going to quickly click on Scene Builder. Okay, this is the web Scene Builder. This is the web version of the Scene Builder. It's quite tiny. But what I want you to see is exactly what Kits imports. Okay, remember, Kits imported all the furniture items, same exact furniture items as the 3D DWG, but it also included the specifications for them. Okay, you do need Java updated on your Internet Explorer in order to view this properly. But what it did is it provided the furniture assets, but it didn't actually build it together. Why? Because the SIF contained no information as to where the furniture items are supposed to be placed. It was just basically a list of furniture items with their specifications that Kits needs to import. So you can see why it's important to import a DWG, a 3D DWG at that, because that's going to allow you to build your project in 3D and in the location of where the furniture items are supposed to be placed. Right? All right, so I'm not going to publish that to my mobile format, but what I want to do now is I want to do the last import, and that's going to be the DWG and the SIF file together. Okay, Kits Office, and that was the media space, date, and lastly, DWG SIF. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to click on Browse to create from DWG. I'm going to select the DWG, and now I'm going to browse to specify from SIF, and I'm going to select the SIF. Now, one thing you need to make sure that both the DWG and the SIF file have the same name. That is very important, or else Kits won't recognize them as the same project. It'll think that they're two projects, and the primary source that it will pull from is always the DWG. Okay. So I've loaded both items, and what Kits will begin to do when I create project is it'll first give me the zones that I'll have to select from. Okay. Remember, with the SIF import, it didn't give me the zones because it didn't know where it didn't have any zones. It didn't have a DWG to look at. I'm going to click on Continue. We're going to get the default warning, and we're going to continue. So Kits now is building the project using the DWG. Once it actually loads all the items and places it where it's supposed to be, as it is in the DWG, it turns to the SIF file, and it begins to read the SIF, and it begins to understand that, oh, well, for this furniture item, these specifications were added. So let's add those specifications to this item. Okay, so now what it's actually doing is it's building the 3D layout with full specifications. Okay, now for all you Project Matrix users out there, you have an advantage. You don't need to import a SIF file. Why? It's because your Project Matrix symbols contain the attributes for specifications. What does that mean? It means that it will build your project, and all the specifications that were created for it are also contained in each symbol that's being used in that project. So you don't need a SIF. Okay, so what do we have here? So we have our project. I'm going to click on Details. You can see all the specifications have been made. I get a nice image of that project that I just imported. I'm now going to publish it to my mobile format. There you go. It's successful. Let's go back to my iPad. You can see here I have no indication that there's a project ready for me to sync, so I'm going to click on the sync link. Right now it's retrieving any information that was sent to my account in the cloud. It's now sending it back to my iPad. Let's go back to the projects gallery screen, and you can now see a 1 appear at the notification bell. Let's click on that notification bell, click Sync Now, and it now begins to pull that project down to my iPad. So again, depending on how intricate your project is, that really determines the sync time. Also, it's heavily dependent on the Wi-Fi environment that you're currently in. So there are my 2 projects that I created, one without the SIF, one with the SIF. Let's click on the one with the SIF. Look how beautiful that looks. I'm quite pleased with the furniture items and what my design team has created for me for my client. Remember, this is fully editable. I can go into this. I can choose different specifications for it. And you can see all those happen right in front of you. Okay, so again, these are fully editable items, and I can go through all the iterations I need to with my client in order to close this deal. Happy with that? I can render it, and I'm going to go and send this first one to my client. And then just in case, if they ask me, you know what, can I see that in a different color? I'm going to go ahead. Oh, there's a beautiful rendering. Let's go back. Now, in case they ask me to provide this in a different swatch, I'm going to go ahead and create a copy. I can even go ahead and select all those and create a folder. That's who it's for. Here's my copy. Let's just change that. We'll say alternate. Let's open it up. And then we can, again, re-specify it without having to change what? The original. Because we want to make sure that we maintain the original so that if ever we have to refer back to it, we can certainly do so. All right, nearly complete there. And last but not least, let's add the specifications. Oh, probably picking the wrong swatch, but that's okay. There we go. And one more. There we have it. We could even change that front just so that it looks a little bit closer. Perfect. So we can go ahead and render that. And I've now created all these different iterations of the project that we just imported into Kit. All right. So if you have any questions, now's the time to make sure that you enter them in the chat box. But that's pretty much it, everyone. So knowing how to utilize this feature can definitely open up your game plan for your projects. Practice it and see how it can help you with your next project. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and take a look at the go-to meeting bar here, control panel. Let's see if there's any questions. And I do have some questions, so let's go through the questions. Okay, so it says here, so you can't import walls from a CAD drawing, only furniture. Yes, so basically only the furniture items, only the recognizable manufacturer symbols are the only things that kits will recognize, okay? Do I need to have AutoCAD installed on my iPad in order to do this? No, you don't. All you need to have, actually don't need anything for your iPad. All you need to do is you need to have access to Kits Web, let's say on a desktop, on a laptop. You can certainly use your iPad, but again, it's a little bit different. I do suggest using some kind of desktop or laptop when you're doing the import process. So why would I want to import just the DWG without the SIF? Well, that's a good question. Sometimes we don't receive the SIF, okay? So a lot of times we can receive actually a DWG that doesn't have an accompanying SIF, okay? And so what we'll get is grayscale, but remember, that's all right because you can import that project, even though it comes into grayscale, you can still fully specify it using Kits on your mobile device, all right? All right, so that's all the questions we have today. So first off, I'd like to thank the community for joining me today and joining me every Wednesday. Don't forget, our awesome support team is always ready to help you with your questions about Kits. So feel free to connect with them, especially if you're stumped on any Kits feature. They definitely love to hear from you. Now, we also want you to become our next Kits collaborator, so contact us with a quote about Kits. Hopefully you're selfie with it, just as you can see here with the lovely contributors in the past. What they're doing is they're taking a selfie with their project at hand. And then what we'll do is we'll reward you with a Starbucks e-gift card of up to $25. All right? Well, that's it for today, folks. Look out for our future announcements and register for upcoming webinars by visiting our Knowledge Center, or look out for those awesome emails from Julia. She'll be sending them frequently. The summer is going to be jam-packed with a lot of things that are happening, especially with some new features that we want to introduce, as well as the introduction of Kits on a Windows 10 device. So again, if you guys are interested with that, you can certainly contact our support team for more information. All right. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you all back next week for Webinar Wednesday. Have a great day, folks.